Now, this lesson really kind of ties in some things that we've learned about already, kind of bringing it all together and synthesizing it as one. And how resources affect evolution has to do with competition, which we talked about, and competition causing natural selection. So let's get into it. The yellow star means a quick check question is being covered on that slide. Okay, so as a review, natural selection explains how evolution occurs. Okay, so you can say that natural selection kind of causes evolution because evolution is when organisms change through time. But you can't say the opposite. You can't say evolution causes natural selection. Okay? Natural selection is one of the mechanisms that can cause evolution, can cause organisms to change through time. It's not the only one. Another term or phrase for natural selection is survival of the fittest, where fittest is fitness, and in natural selection or in biology, fitness is the ability to survive and reproduce. So it's not like how fast can you, how much weight you can lift, and they're not Fergie working on their fitness. Fitness in biology is the ability of an organism to survive and then to reproduce. So anything that increases its survival, whether it can run and catch food or run and get away from prey, or whether it fits in and doesn't, blends in and doesn't get eaten, whatever can cause it to survive, then it needs to be able to reproduce to be able to pass on those good traits. So for evolution or natural selection to work, you need to have, first off, a struggle for existence. You need for organisms to have more babies than what can survive in the ecosystem. So they need to be competing. They need to be trying to, win so they can survive. So there has to be a struggle for existence. There has to be differences within the population. For natural selection to work, there has to be variation within the traits, whether it's fur color or how fast they can run or how, clever they are. So natural selection can work on behaviors too, if those are genetically determined, those behaviors. So there has to be differences, something that nature can select for, right? And those differences have to cause a difference in fitness, have to cause a difference in their ability to survive and reproduce. There are differences within organisms that aren't giving them a fitness advantage. So they're just kind of there, but natural selection isn't selecting for them. So they don't become more common. And lastly, that fourth thing is that those differences have to be heritable. So they have to be in the genetic code to be able to pass on to the offspring. So you need those four things for natural selection to work. All right, so competition. This is a review. We've already covered this. You can talk about competition being interspecific or intraspecific. So inter is when there's different species. Intra is when it's within the same species. So interspecific, you could be these plants here are fighting over or competing over sunlight. They're different species of plants, but they're all trying to get that same light. Or you can talk about, things eating the grass and different species all trying to eat that grass so they have food. All right. Intraspecific, there's also competition for food and sunlight, but within species, one big thing that you don't have between species is mating. So males fight often for a female in a lot of organisms, and that would be an example, a classic example of intraspecific. Now, I know the terms are really similar, and what I suggested before was to look at the root word. So inter means between. So interstate is a road that goes between states. And the root word intra means within or inside. So intracellular, intrapersonal. So I always, when I have to think about it, I think, okay, inter, and then I always think interstate because that's the one I know the most. I'm like, interstate is between. Okay, inter is between. All right, competition can also be talked about being direct or indirect. Direct competition is what it sounds like. It's when there's two individuals at the same time, same place, They are competing with each other at that moment. Okay, this can be an direct competition can be both interspecific and intraspecific. So in this picture here, we've got some males fighting, so they're same species, so it's intra. But here we've got a cheetah chasing a gazelle. Those are different species, so it's interspecific competition. So hunting, this is a competition. It's a direct competition. Hunting can be considered a competition because they're both seeing who can run the fastest, right? That's what they're competing. Whoever runs the fastest is the winner, whether the gazelle gets away or the cheetah gets its lunch, right? So indirect competition is when things are fighting over the same resources or competing for the same resources. They're not necessarily fighting each other, or it's a competition between those two individuals, but they both need that same habitat or that resource. So this picture of the zebras and the wildebeest down at a watering hole. They both need the grass, they both need the water, but they're not fighting each other. Sunlight for the plants. They're all trying to compete for it, but they're not like, there's not a battle between two individuals. The code word for this video is zebra. The code word for this video is zebra. Okay, so to tie it all together, competition and natural selection, first off, I want to point out that the more individuals you have, the more competition there's going to be. Okay, so the more individuals is when the population increases, you're going to have more competition because there's going to be more that need that food, that habitat. And we can apply this to what we learned about in, I don't know what unit it was, but we learned about carrying capacity earlier. If you remember, when populations grow, if we look at populations growth, so the number of individuals over time, you have this time where the population is growing exponentially. It's just increasing, increasing, increasing. And then it gets to a point where it reaches its carrying capacity. And the carrying capacity is the number of individuals the environment can sustain. And that's based on the amount of food available and the amount of habitat available. Now, if you remember, carrying capacity can change. It can shift as the habitat changes. So if there's a fire that comes through and burns up a lot of the plants, well, then that's going to drop the carrying capacity. This line would go down. That's going to drop the carrying capacity because now there's less food, right? When, or if there's or if a competitor, another species gets eliminated, that might raise the carrying capacity because now they're not competing with another species for food and habitat. So carrying capacity can change. When you get to the carrying capacity, that's when you have competition between organisms within the population. Okay, that's when you get competition. Here, at this point, when they're increasing rapidly, there is no competition. There is no struggle for existence. So there's no competition and there's no natural selection here. Right? Because again, you don't have that struggle for existence. There's plenty of food, plenty of habitat, everybody gets stuff. So there's no competition. Once you reach carrying capacity, that's when competition kicks in, and that's when natural selection can start working. And the traits that allow the individuals to outcompete, so the traits that give them an increase in fitness because they're outcompeting, they can better survive, then they're going to be able to reproduce.